All right, there's a dense fog outside in the south towns here of Western New York. Matthew Fairburn, hopefully there's not a dense fog in our brains because the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is back here on Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. I'm your host, Chris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. And that handsome devil has been hard at work in the past 24 hours. That is your Sabres writer for The Athletic. His name is Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work over at theathletic.com/Sabres. Some game coverage and also some interesting pieces that aren't always about the results on the ice for the Buffalo Sabres. That's what Matthew Fairburn does over at The Athletic. So get over there, get a subscription. Trade deadline's coming up on Friday. And the Sabres find themselves in the thick of things. We'll get into that here in a little bit. If you're watching this show on YouTube, like this video, please like this video. Hit the thumbs up right now, actually. I'm going to give you a second to do that right now. I'm going to talk through it. Okay, good. Everyone just hit the like button. Subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is ready to go. And you can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could, please leave a 5-star review. Sabres continued their heater last night. Matthew Fairburn, 4th straight victory coming out of the Olympic break. Sabres held on for a 3-2 victory over the Vegas Golden Knights. Jason Zucker, Owen Power, Tage Thompson, who now has an 8-game point streak, got the goals for the Sabres. Alex Lyon made 27 saves. Started strong. I think it was about, 21 minutes. They were really on top of it. Vegas kind of leveled things out there the rest of the way. Sabres held on for a victory. Nice win. But I don't know if that's what everyone wants to talk about. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on the game before we go into the bigger piece of business that I think fans are eagerly awaiting updates on?
You know, it's interesting. Usually a 3-2 win over Jack Eichel and the Vegas Golden Knights with a raucous pregame ceremony for Tage Thompson and celebrating his Olympic gold medal and 4th straight win coming out of the break. Usually that would be the headline item on the show, but it does feel like the Sabres becoming one of the main characters of the trade deadline yesterday might have moved up the ledger a little bit. But we can hit on the game really quick. And Jack Eichel did get cheered before the game and then mercilessly booed during it. So it was kind of the combination I expected. Give him the polite, cheers for what he did for Team USA and then get right back to business of booing him every time he touches the puck. It was another game of, this team finding different ways to win. They jump out to a fast start, that 3-0 lead, and then they have to kind of hold down the fort a little bit. There was a bit of a sloppy play high in the zone from Josh Doan and the defenseman involved, Power, and it was mostly Power and Doan, I guess, responsible for that turnover at the offensive blue line that led to a breakaway that made it 3-2, and I think gave Vegas the necessary life to get that push going. But the one of the big differences with this Sabres team this year is the ability to handle the push, the ability to protect leads and close out games is so much better than it was last season, and that's why they're winning a lot of these one-goal games. They're closing a lot of games in regulation. They have the most regulation wins in the Eastern Conference. And when we talk about, whether they're going to end the drought and the odds get better by the day, that's going to be that's a huge factor as to why a lot of these models are saying 80+%. Now, I think the Athletics model going into yesterday had them at 93%. Regulation wins is a big tiebreaker, and they're going to have everybody, it seems like. So at least the key players. So the playoffs are looking really, really likely. at the moment. 21 games is a long time, but I think the team has a healthy paranoia about the bottom falling out at the same time, right? That's part of why I feel like it won't, is because they've been on guard about it all year, starting with Alex Lyon, seemingly trying to pump the tires every time. He's feeling it from what happened in Detroit last year. So it looks like a playoff team, and now you've got the general manager in on, I would say, the best player available at the trade deadline in Robert Thomas. So between the atmosphere last night, the results, and the Sabres being in the mix on a player the caliber of Robert Thomas, what was it when they fired Kevin Adams? Pete Coelho said they wanted to become the center of the hockey universe, right? It's feeling like they're getting there. They're certainly, people are talking about the Buffalo Sabres, and for all the right reasons compared to a few months ago.
Yeah, I think 30 regulation wins, third in the league, first in the conference. Are there teams that are hotter than the Sabres? Maybe not in the last 3 months, but I mean, Dallas does have 10 wins in a row, but look, we're talking about the Sabres among the league elite clubs, Colorado, Tampa, Dallas. The Sabres are right there. It's been it felt like a slow burn. The Olympic break came and you're just kind of figuring it out. Like, are they real? We asked that question. We both agree that they're real. They're showing it. 78 points right now. They had 79 all last year. They're 1 point off their full season pace now after the victory over the Golden Knights. When I look at the team, last night's game is kind of, they come out hot, very active sticks, jumping on loose pucks, frustrating Vegas. Anytime there was a loose puck, the Sabres were right there. Anytime a a Golden Knights player got a puck, Sabres are right on them. And you're starting to see a little bit of an identity forming with the team. And it's the identity of the team that I think they're really looking to shape and solidify an identity with a potential acquisition of a Robert Thomas from the St. Louis Blues. So yesterday, news comes out from a couple insiders, Darren Dreger, I think the Athletics' Chris Johnston also kind of added, he furthered the Dreger news that the Sabres and Blues were in deep on some talks. And I think we should just kind of get into it, I guess. And I really want to kind of, grind down, I guess, to the whys of the deal. And I've already kind of hinted at it, at least from my perspective. The team's winning, but they certainly have room to grow and get better. Part of that identity is keeping your foot on the gas for 60 minutes and not maybe sitting back a little bit, or, not that they're doing that necessarily, but how do you just carve out that hardworking blue collar identity for a full 60 minutes? And you do it by getting kind of a two-way matchup center that can be a playmaker. Because look, I think solidifying the identity is going to be important for this group moving forward, not just, the last 21 games of the regular season, but into the playoffs. And hopefully they can win a couple series or more. You never know once you get a ticket to the dance. But, building that identity of that strong, hard to play against team, a guy like that would help do this. And by the way, it's Buffalo still, right? It's a limited free agent market, and you have the potential to get a 26-year-old, I would say bona fide 1C. You have to put your chips in and go and see if you can continue to capture that lightning in a bottle. I just said a lot there, but that's what I think about. If you look at last night's game, I think that was representative of the big picture. You have an opportunity here to really solidify your identity, because we talked yesterday on the phone. And I asked you, I was like, what is the Sabres identity? I don't know if they have an identity. They'd have one if they could make this acquisition.
It feels like their identity, a lot of it is built around the top four defensemen and how active they are and how engaged they are in the offensive play. But I think, to your point, and I think Alex Lyon touched on this post game, is that they're starting to. I think the word he used was recipe, right? They're starting to find the recipe and repeat the recipe a little bit, and it is. Tage Thompson said the other day that that fast and in your face, like in your face, I think is the aim that they're going for, and they're much more in your face than they were at the beginning of the year or at any point last year. And part of that is, I look at the first period last night, and you mentioned like active sticks and the way they're snapping the puck around, like they're decisive and they're playing fast, but it's not even about team speed. It's just about being on top of the other team and not giving them time to think. That's the type of identity that I think they're trying to form. And it does speak to the potential of this team that I don't think the identity is fully formed. And yet, they're finding all these different ways to win, which brings us to the idea of Robert Thomas and new territory for Sabres fans for, you know, since what, 10 or 15 years ago that they were a serious buyer at the deadline, probably 15 years, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
maybe they had a deadline where they did a small bit of buying, right? They got Wayne Simmons one year. They got Jordan Greenway a few years ago. But like being a real buyer, I think I don't know how strong this sentiment is out there. And I hesitate to put too much into the sentiment, but the idea that they've got a good thing going, right? They've got this good thing going, and you got to be careful to disrupt it and all that. That's not how it works, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not how the good teams that are chasing the Stanley Cup think. That's not how the Carolina Hurricanes were thinking when they swung those deals to get Mika Rantanen and then to trade him out. That's not how the Florida Panthers were thinking when they brought in Brad Marchand at the deadline and
Mhm.
brought in other pieces, that pushed them to a Stanley Cup back to back years. Like your point about the free agent class and getting players to Buffalo is important to underscore the entire conversation because I think a lot of teams around the league are probably looking at the free agent class or looking at the lack of player movement in general. You have all these no trade clauses that impact Buffalo a lot more than every other team, but they impact other teams too. I mean, look at the Tyler Myers situation. And I don't know where he's considering going, but he's got full control over that. Whatever team's hoping to acquire him is just hoping he says yes. And that's so many players around the league. So I think a lot of teams are starting to use the trade deadline to get a head start on the offseason. We saw it last year in Buffalo with the Josh Norris trade.
Yeah.
This is a time of year where there's player movement. This is why at some points last year and early this year we were saying, if you're making a general manager change, it makes sense to do it in season. More so than people think, oh, just do it, wait till the end of the year. Like big business happens now. It happens now and it happens in the summer. And those are basically the two big times a year. So a 26-year-old center who is franchise caliber, right? Either a really good 2C or a pretty good 1C.
It's certainly franchise altering if you can make the acquisition, but please go ahead.
He's under contract for 8.125 million, which is a really reasonable number given what he brings to the table. Back-to-back 80-point seasons, back-to-back 60 assist seasons.
Mhm.
The defensive chops that you mentioned. Where are you going to get a player like that otherwise, right?
Yeah.
There's not that player available on the free agent market. They don't come available all that often on the trade market. And so you do have to look at the opportunity and you have to be thinking about a whole bunch of different things. If you're Jarmo Kekalainen, you have to be thinking about this year, right now, how this guy can help you level up into a different tier of contender, which is important because
Mhm.
we don't know if they'll be back here next year, right? Like injuries, everything that can happen. You don't know if you'll be back in this position, this hot, this healthy, you know, this ready seemingly to make a run, getting this type of goaltending, all those things. So there's that opportunity, but then you also just have to be thinking a window is opening here, right? Clearly, a window has opened for the Sabres. They've been waiting for it to open for a long time. You need to think about finding players that fit that window and that can maximize your chances in that window. And it's why I think it makes sense a little bit on both sides because a lot of people would be wondering, okay, centers don't become available. This guy's under contract. He's a really good player. Why the hell are the Blues thinking about moving him? I kind of think the same thing. Like I don't totally follow the Blues logic, but it sounds like they think their younger players are going to be the ones that they build the next contender around. And by
Yeah.
the time those guys are ready, Robert Thomas might, be on the wrong side of the aging curve relative to the rest of the core. That combined with the idea that this might be a time to maximize a return on the player, get them some other younger assets that better match their core, then I can see that. And I don't think they're going to trade him just to trade him. So that sort of leads us into the conversation about what would you give up, right? And we talked about a month ago to the day, I believe, we had a Robert Thomas discussion on this show.
Yeah. It was February 4th. I went back and looked. Yep.
And the price that has been reported by Jeremy Rutherford, the Athletics Blues writer, is, the aim is 3 top half of the first round assets. And when you think about the fact that Quinn Hughes went for 4
Mhm.
such assets, you know, maybe they weren't all top half of the first round assets, but
Ogren wasn't. No.
in the first round pick probably isn't. Um, so you could give up 3 assets for Thomas. That seems realistic to me. Like it seems like the Quinn Hughes bar should dictate how far the Blues are willing to push on this. The Sabres have like a whole long list of combinations that they could go with to get a deal like this done. And it is heavily dependent on the Blues preferences, right? Because they're not going to do a trade for a player that, well, I guess he's perceived as a first round asset, but they don't truly believe that, right? And
Yeah.
they're going to want players that they can really picture building the next wave around. So, I mean, the names that I think you're not touching the top 4 defensemen, I don't think, you know, on the current team. Owen Power, I saw his name out there yesterday. I think Butcher Gross threw that at the wall. I'd be surprised. And I don't know how much value needs to go the other way. Like I would just be surprised given what we said about the identity of the team. Bowen Byram not involved in the package, according to Rutherford. If your goal is to minimize the impact on the current roster, which it should be, then I think you're starting with Noah Ostlund, Konsta Helenus, Radim Murtka, the first round pick, Jack Quinn, I suppose Isak Rosen, Anton Wahlberg. And now I'm not saying this is the whole package. This is
Right. You're
you're not
looking at
saying
the
it, but
pool. The pool.
the pool of assets that you're drawing from. Brody Zemer, a name we brought up when we were talking yesterday. Devin Levi. You'd have to wonder, like, yeah, the Isak Rosen, Anton Wahlberg, Ryan Johnson, if there's interest there.
Two
Uh,
others. Two
you
others,
know,
I think, in the prospect side of things. Max Sturbuck
yeah.
and Adam Kleber I'd throw in there also.
So that's a huge, huge pile of potential players and picks to get this done. right?
Mhm.
This year's first, next year's first. Um, and you need 3 of those. If you're talking current roster players, maybe you can get them to take Jack Quinn. Maybe
Money
there's some
has to
interest there.
move ideally, and that's probably where like a Butchie Grass is looks at the basic math of the deal and says, "Oh, Owen Power." Um, I think money, some level of money has to
But
move when you're
not that
adding an
much.
8-1 hit. No,
Not
but
that
when you're
much.
adding an 8-1 hit, I think you gotta it's not just singularly about the deal, right? Because there's other things to talk about this
Yes.
offseason when it comes to the money. But I would say that if you can move a little bit of money and it kinda is a first round pick, the equivalent of a first round pick, whether it was a guy that was a first round pick in the NHL draft or one that's exceeded expectations as play like one. Quinn is the one that you circle like a couple times.
Yeah. And does he meet that criteria for the Blues is the big question. And I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know how their scouts and their front office will think about that. I can say he doesn't strike me as a Blues type, right? In terms of what they are valuing. But if they're trying to get rid of Kyrou, if they're, maybe he fits their age bracket a little bit better and they see some of the scoring upside, there's a there's a chance, but would he be valued still as a top half of the first round asset? It doesn't seem super likely. The name that I didn't mention that I'm sure Armstrong has brought up in trade conversations
Yeah.
is
Playing on
Zach
the fourth
Benson.
line. Yeah.
And Zach Benson certainly would not be the preference, right? That would not be the first guy you want to toss into a deal like this. I don't know that I'm totally drawing the line though. Like it's going to be a long week, I'm sure. Who knows? This deal could get over the finish line at any moment for the Sabres or for another team. It does seem like there's a good chance that he will get traded. And you got to think there's other teams involved trying to up the ante, sweeten the pot a little bit. Benson is right on the line of like, man, that would really hurt. But, you're getting this is where I say Yarmo has to be thinking about the puzzle long term, the money long term, how it all fits in. If you get Robert Thomas, you know,
Mhm.
something has to give in the summer, whether that's trading one of the defensemen, probably not the first choice, letting Alex Tuck walk,
Mhm.
or finding a way to get out of Josh Norris's
Josh
contract.
Norris. Yeah. Yeah.
Zach Benson being an RFA, I don't think he's in for a massive payday because I don't think he has the incentive to want to take a long term deal, considering he's had a down year injury wise, just availability wise. Like there's
Just
not a
the
lot.
offense hasn't
Yeah, he's
he
not
hasn't
scoring.
touched his what his peak could be offensively, and I think that right there is the primary factor, and the injuries haven't helped.
And I'm sure the Blues would love to get a player like Zach Benson, and they're probably, asking for. But again, I think they also have to recognize if they're making this deal at the deadline and they're trying to get this deal to the finish line at the deadline, that contenders aren't trying to hurt their current roster while making a deal like this. But the Minnesota Wild did give up, a couple of guys, I guess, that were useful on their roster. But I don't know that they gave up a Zach Benson level NHL player in the Quinn Hughes deal. Would you agree with
No.
that? I don't
No,
think
they
they did.
haven't. No. I mean, William hasn't been around long enough. Ogren hasn't been around long enough. Marco Rossi hasn't lived up to what Zach Benson, I think, has already done in terms of impact on the team consistently. So, no, to answer your question directly,
So that
no.
is what I think they should be drawing off of as far as, trade value here. It's like Quinn Hughes is arguably, I mean, he's a top 2 or 3 defenseman in the world. And he is, you know, probably a top 10 player in the world right now.
Yeah, Robert Thomas isn't the equivalent
No.
at the
And
center position to what Quinn Hughes is
there's
to the defense.
scarcity at center that plays into it, but 3 really strong assets should get it done. And so it will probably cost you 2 of Mertka, Helenius, and Oslin.
Yeah.
And along with maybe a first round pick, and like I said, maybe you can get him to take Jack Quinn's money off the books. Jack Quinn is on pace for like 50 points. And so he shouldn't be completely, damaged goods. But I
He's got
don't know that
basically this he's got basically the same amount of points that 2 players that just got paid pretty healthy in the past 12 months have. He's right up there with Doan. He's right up there with Peterka in terms of points. If we're just talking counting stats, how do you get your points, right? But I mean, it's not like, look, I think like when, I don't know if it's league wide, but certainly in Buffalo, Quinn has become this guy that he's like the new Matthias Samuelsson almost, where Samuelsson was last year. Maybe not that bad. People are pretty harsh on Samuelsson, but Quinn's better than I think what a lot of the opinion is.
and yet probably still not value-wise what
Yeah.
he once was. So, but he could be in a deal like this, and I think it could make some sense. Again, it's
I think
all
he
about
has to be in a deal like this. He's just not
unless he's in
the
a
primary
separate
pillar.
deal, just
Mhm.
to, make because the other part is with money, you want to hopefully save enough to go find a defenseman still,
Yeah.
right? Although Zach Metza's, just keeps climbing. He was, they were playing him a bunch with Darlene. Um,
Yeah.
so who knows? Maybe they're really feeling it with Metza. So all those pieces, like, what would be you're the prospect guy. You're the foremost expert. Like, what do you think would be fair value of those guys? And is there a preference for you in terms of, I know you could put your Blues hat on and say, who would you want
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
that deep pool that we just, outlined, or the Sabres perspective, who would you be trying to grip a little tighter?
So I think Mertka is in the deal. Massive right shot, future Olympian defenseman. I think that between Helenius and Oslin, it's very interesting. I think body type matters in this discussion. And I think, I think Oslin is the better player, but I think that Helenius is very, very attractive from a body type, rugged. I just think that there's something there where it's one of those two. I think it's the first, and probably Quinn. And does it get it done?
There's not a
Um,
lot of teams that are going to be able to match you on Helenius Mertka, a first round pick, and Jack Quinn.
yeah.
And maybe something can come back the other way, like one of those depth defensemen that the Blues have.
On the surface, Matt, I think some people would say that's not enough to get this done. Like, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. Again, I think that the Quinn Hughes trade is a great guidepost for the framework for a proposed deal here. There's before we kind of get back to like the biggest thing here is like the biggest unknown is the future health of Yuri Koulik. Koulik, if he was healthy this year, I don't think there's any question that he would be right in the center of this discussion. And if they have a read on the future outlook for Koulik, moving forward next year, he's fine, no setbacks. It might be hard to predict. What a massive, just something that we don't think about when we're talking about this trade, like for the future of the team. Like, oh, we're giving up Oslin, maybe you're giving up Polonus. Got Koulik still there.
It's
He's a
why
hell of a
they
player.
they don't have room for them all.
Right, they don't
right?
have room for them all, and
So you do have to make a move at some point if you're Jarmo Kekalainen and use this, you know, treasure trove of assets to make your team better. And look, eventually, like you could find a way to stack it and move things around to get, you know, yourself into a spot where all those guys could be on the team. But really,
Mhm,
they realistically, like with the guys they already have on the roster, it's hard to picture. And the Koulik point is a timely one because they're supposed to be getting results back on his latest round of testing in terms of whether he
mhm.
can take the next step. And I think it might be unrealistic to expect much from him the rest of the way,
I'm not
regardless.
expecting anything from him.
Regardless of how those tests turn out, it's going to be, you know, it's tough to come back from. But to your point, if there's some strong belief that next year you're, you know, picking up where you left off with Kulik, and yeah, it's going to impact his development. He lost a year at a really important time of his career, but that's still I mean, a guy that they were planning on being their number one center.
Here
And,
yeah.
you know, so if you get rid of a couple of these other guys, it's still a deep pool, you know, and you still have look, you're not giving up all those guys, right? So if you give up Helenus, Mertka, and a first round pick and Jack Quinn, you've still got Brody Zemer. You've still got Anton Wahlberg. You've still got Noah Oslin, right? You've still got like some
Let's
forwards that are worthwhile.
I wanna talk about Oslin, though, because I think if you look at it from a Sabres perspective, I think there's this thought that if you somehow acquire Robert Thomas and you keep Noah Oslin, that's like this massive win for the Sabres organization, and that's what gives you pause about that package. Is that the best that the Sabres can offer? Mertka, Helenus, a first, and Quinn. It's a lot. Um, do you agree with that, by the way? Like, it really comes down to what you think. Where is Noah Oslin versus Konsta Helenus in 5 years? That's really what it comes down to. We have, as observers of the team, you're a reporter, you have the ability to have seen Noah Oslin have, what does he have, 20 points in his first NHL season, whatever it is, somewhere around there. And the way that he plays, the little things that he does. We don't have that same benefit with Helenus. It's a very brief window. His first sniff. It's not even close to what he's going to be this time next year, right? So it feels like an overwhelming win if you keep Noah Oslin.
I think so. And but I do think, like you said, very different players in a sense, like body
It's
type
body
wise.
type and
And
the historical health of the player matters. And Consta's been considerably healthier than Noah Oslin has
playing
in his
against
career.
men in his draft year too, right? Like playing
Mhm.
in that league. And again, I'm applying thinking to the Blues that I shouldn't be, but I'm looking at their history, their type, right? The
You have
guys
to.
that they like. And Noah Oslin is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? Because of the body type and because of the size. But I can tell you the Sabres organization is incredibly high on this player. Like, so that's where I'm like the guys in the room like think a lot of Noah Oslin and hasn't it I mean, it was helped by what he did in
Right.
Tampa, but like they think he is a like really, really good player. Um, they have a lot of belief in what he could become for them, what he already is for them, frankly.
Mhm.
What's interesting is he's showing some chops on the wing and winning wall battles and, you know, being able to handle that. And that's you know, that makes you think about how the puzzle pieces could fit together if you get Robert Thomas. And we know faceoffs have been an issue for him, but I think in terms of upside, it's
Mhm.
such an interesting conversation and one that's like hard to it's a little bit of a risk either way, whoever you give up. I just think upside-wise, Osland has the higher ceiling than Hellenuus. But
I don't know. Yeah, I don't
but I
know.
think the likelihood that Hellenuus is, you know, there is an outcome where he is the longer term, like, more durable, consistent top 9 piece, like, versatile, move him
You need to
around.
look you need to look at what else St. Louis has also. Okay, so you can't just, you know what I mean? Like, who makes the most sense for what St. Louis is going to be looking to build around, right? I think that does matter also. If you look at what St. Louis has, they have some young players on their roster right now, and they have some young guys coming. Whether it's look, it's pretty clear that their core is going to be Jake Neighbors, Jimmy Snuggerud, um, Dylan Holloway. I'll throw him in the mix. He's probably the same age as Neighbors. Dalibor Dvorsky. Those types. They have on the back end. They drafted Jarosek. Trying to think what else they have. So I mean, who by
Theo
the way,
Lindstein, they drafted,
yeah, a Swedish
um,
kid. They acquired Logan Mailloux in the Bolduc deal, right? Um, Carbonell. They drafted Carbonell last year. Almost made the team out of camp. Grinding, kind of tough on the puck. Like they're almost having a little bit of an identity there too. Boy, I'll tell you what. Hellenuus fits in with those guys really well when you look
well,
at the forwards that I just mentioned
as you're
in the
going through
Western
that,
Conference. Yeah, yeah.
you think about, yes, he fits really well. You also wonder, do you need to supplement with a different type, right? Do you need
Hmm.
you're losing an elite playmaker if you make this trade, if you're the St. Louis Blues. So are you looking
Hmm.
to acquire one, you know, in I don't know if Osland is elite in that category, certainly not yet, but he's
I
got
think he's a
the
great
potential.
playmaker.
He's got
Yeah.
potential to be. I feel like that's his strength, one of the strengths of his game. So are you looking to say we need another guy that fits that type? Or are you looking to say we need maybe a slightly different type to fit the puzzle pieces together and make a lineup? I don't know. That's a question for the Blues to answer, but
You know why I'm circling back to this discussion that we're having right now, right? For me, Hellenuus, Mertka, Quinn, and the first doesn't hurt enough, I think is what I'm saying.
well, part of the reason it doesn't hurt
Oslin
is
would hurt.
you have so much else, right? It doesn't hurt
Oslin would
because
hurt,
it would. Yeah.
and it should hurt a deal like this, I think. It should hurt more than that other package does.
Another deal to think about here
And
is
that's a lot. They're both a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Mirka would hurt. I mean,
Mertka
Mirka,
would hurt.
but again, part of why Mirka doesn't hurt is like the top 4 and the depth they have. Like this is the benefit of drafting so high for so long and like having all
Mhm.
these picks and all these prospects in your system. It's like you can look at other options that are maybe, and that's not, you know, the any business of the Blues, right? It's like, well, this doesn't hurt enough because you've got another guy. It's like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you pick in the top 10 for a decade. But I think in terms of, you know, like there's no question Oslin would hurt, but they could definitely withstand that piece of it too. Like you could
Yeah,
definitely
I'm not moving off that deal, I don't think, with constant because I do like, I don't wanna undersell Hellenuus at the same time, and I'm kinda
or Mirka
teetering on that the
or
way that we
Mirka.
talk or
I
Merc well,
mean,
yeah, I think it's just like a no-brainer that
they'll want them.
that you'll have to put in.
But the other deal I wanted to mention, I lost my train of thought for a second, was the Jack Eichel trade. Some different circumstances there, given
Yeah.
that, leverage wise, it was pretty well known he wanted out and the medical situation and all that, but a higher level player than Robert Thomas, right? and it was a first round pick. Peyton Krebs, who is not, I mean, you could speak
At
to
the
it better than
time, he was still thought of, even though coming off the injury and everything, he was still thought of as a,
a, a
middle of the
Hellenus,
first round pick. Yeah, similar.
Hellenus type of asset, maybe.
I think, yeah, Hellnuts, I think, had more value, slightly more value. I don't know. It's close. It's close.
And Alex Tuck, a good,
Mhm.
mid-20s NHL player who blossomed into even more. But that's not, I mean, the package we've put together for Robert Thomas might be just as, if not more attractive, I think.
Mhm.
So I think you got to think about that too. That because these centers don't change teams very often, we don't have a lot of deals to draw on, but that feels like a comparable. How old was Eichel at the time of that trade? Around the same age?
Yeah.
And I think it's accepted that he was better even with the injury than Thomas. So something to think about too. That's where I feel like even if it doesn't hurt a ton or doesn't hurt enough, I really think the reason why is because of what the Sabres have. They have Koulik, they have Oslin. So if they give up Hellenus, and if they give up Merca, it's like, well, they have such a young NHL blue line, and they have Sturbach, and they have Kleber. They've done a pretty good job drafting, over the last handful of years and developing some of these guys into real players that could, crack into the NHL someday. I do wonder about Zemer and the
I was just gonna
connection
go there.
to Snuggerud at the University of Minnesota and the type, right? We're talking about the
Played
type
all year with them.
of the St.
Yeah.
Louis Blues, and this is a guy that he I mean, he just feels like a Blue, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
hard-nosed, he's captain, the leadership, the work ethic, the competitiveness, and he's got, 22 goals for the Gophers this year. He's having a great year. I wouldn't be surprised. That's why I say it's all about preference, right? Like, if
Yeah.
they're thinking, what if they could get a couple of, an extra, remove Hellenus, but get extra, right? Or remove the
Mhm.
first round pick and get extra, where they get, maybe Zemer's more of a late first round asset. And I don't know. There's so many combinations they could go with. It's why it's hard to pin down what a deal could look like and whether they'll actually want to eventually say yes on a deal. They're going to have to feel conviction about what they're getting. The goalie piece is interesting, right? The Sabres stole a goalie from these guys, a goalie that they felt like might have been their future in net, Colton Ellis. How do they feel about Devin Levi, who's having a
Yeah.
nice year in the AHL? Um, it is a deep, deep pool that the Sabres have, and depending on your preference, it feels like there's any number of packages they could put together.
Yeah, the Zemer one's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just I wanted to talk through it, I guess. Hit the like button as I think about where I wanna go with this, but it's gotta hurt. Both of those packages hurt. For me, you asked the question, 20 minutes later, we're still trying to get the answer out of me, but I think it is that Helena Smirtka first and Quinn that I serve up. I think that's plenty. Um, and I mean, like I said, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, but I think that's where I go with a deal like this. And then you got to understand, what you're competing against. I think when you look at Utah, what they would have to step up with, it's a similar package of prospects. And I guess you have to understand how does your package rate against a Caleb Denoyer, Tisha Ginla type of package with a first and something else. If that's what Utah kind of has to throw out there,
I don't know if they would, based on
and
some of the chatter
I
I've
don't know
heard,
if
I don't
they,
know if Denoyer is one that they want to touch. I think it's more like Boot, maybe a Ginla. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. They do have enough to challenge the Sabres on this deal, and
Yeah.
they've got all the incentive to do so as well. in
Mhm.
a very similar spot to the Sabres with a window opening and a need, for a Robert Thomas type of player that, it should be said that Thomas has extensive playoff experience and has a, track record of performing in the playoffs and being that type of matchup guy that can really help. So, yeah, I think they have the potential to challenge the Sabres a little bit on this. They have, some good prospects in their own right.
Hellenu's future Olympian, Mertka future Olympian. Go out and use the first round pick and draft another future Olympian. And, a guy like Quinn, take some money back, a guy that maybe you can do something with who can score goals. And he's having almost a reclamation type of season. I mean, missed a breakaway last night, missed another short breakaway. It's like, you're almost hoping that he cashes those.
Right. It's like,
And Armstrong's like, oh yeah, okay, I get what
Armstrong
Baker's saying.
watched it and
Yeah, right.
but
But and back to Robert Thomas and that identity thing. When you look at Robert Thomas again, I think a lot of the things that we talk about with some of the standout players this year, Robert Thomas does. The playmaking ability. You were just talking about Noah Ostlund. The playmaking ability of a Noah Ostlund, Robert Thomas has that. The small area game, the corner work. Some of the things that we talk about with Zach Benson, why he's so effective. Robert Thomas does that. The forechecking. I don't know if he's as tenacious as a Josh Doan, but he's close. Where the hell's Josh Doan, by the way? 12
Yeah.
games since he signed his contract. He's got, 5 points, 3 goals, 2 assists. Look, I'm just kidding. I don't think the money is weighing him down. He doesn't have it yet. It's not weighing down his pockets yet, But it's kind of funny how it just kind of
a little bit of a slump.
cooled a little bit. We saw one earlier in the season with him as well. He'll be fine. I'm not dogging him. Everyone, relax. But just noteworthy that maybe he's saving himself. Maybe he's going to be playoff big dog Josh Doan. But Thomas does a lot of those things. I think like again, identity. The other thing I want to mention with Robert Thomas is what is his health? Presently,
He's had some injuries this year.
He's had some injuries this year.
We also haven't brought up much the trade clause, no trade clause he's got. Would he come to Buffalo? I tend to think there's a decent chance. He's from Toronto or outside of Toronto, Aurora, Ontario.
Robert Thomas has to understand what the long-term viability is of the Sabres.
Right. Especially if he has
versus
options.
where he is. Yes. That's
Especially
right.
if he has options. If the Blues get a couple of these deals close to the finish line and he's got the option. Now, they may be trying to squeeze the best deal and say, we're either taking this one or you're not moving. I don't know how badly he wants to move, but I think any player in this situation would start to be resigned to it to an extent.
Got a young child, right?
Yeah. So he doesn't have really any connections to the Sabres in terms of past teammates or anything like that. Not strong ones anyway. So that's a wild card in all this, but I have to think that there's a chance. It's a lot different than it would have been in the summer, right? Where I think it would have been an instant no, potentially. I mean, I don't know how important being close to home is to him. That could be enough to get it over the line regardless. But the way the Sabres are playing and the buzz they're creating around the league and some of the players they have, like it should be at least a conversation for Thomas.
Well, part of it is it's up to you what the long-term viability is here, Robert Thomas. You're 26 years old. We're going to have you play with Tage Thompson. You don't have to come in here and be the leader of the team. And you can just come in, play hockey and do your thing and be a part of the success, a big part of the success. Look at our defense.
Yeah.
I think there's he does fit really well into the system. If you're Robert Thomas, you're probably saying, who's going to be the coach of this team?
Sure, but I also think NHL players are probably they got to know coaches change all the time, right?
Right. It's not make or break, but he's got to be thinking about it anyways, right?
But yeah, it would be a factor. And that's an interesting conversation for post deadline for us is like, who is going to be the coach of this team?
Yeah.
Because Lindy Ruff is getting a nice little boost of energy, I think, from this run,
Yep,
and he's got a real shot at the Jack Adams, I think, given the turnaround. So
he does.
a lot of factors that Robert Thomas has to consider for sure, but this is a more attractive place to play than it was 6
What
to
is
12 months
his
ago.
no trade clause? What's the actual parameters of his clause? It's not full, right? It's modified
I
of some
think it
sort.
I think it's full. I thought it was
The
full.
reason I'm asking is, these no trade clauses are just everyone knows this. It's like this isn't breaking news. They are so out of control. Just looking at some players, you know, Drew O'Connor, a 2.5 AAV guy, has a 12-team no trade list in this league. You kidding me?
Robert Thomas's is full. So,
Full. Okay. I was going to say, if Drew O'Connor has a 12-team, Robert Thomas better have a full.
yeah. So it's a factor for sure. And but and he has what's he got left on this deal? He's in year 3 of 8. So, um 5 years left on the deal. It's a really nice contract situation for a player of that caliber.
What
And
we didn't get to, Matt, is, do they need to do the deal? No. Do you burn up assets and do you still move pieces around to really address what you need to address with one more defenseman? And that's going to be the other part of this discussion that we just haven't had. And I don't know if we're going to be able to have it before the deadline because we're already at 52-ish minutes right now. Give me some quick thoughts on that, though. We gotta. You hinted at it earlier.
could you get them to throw in Tyler Tucker in the deal? Is that good enough? Like,
Are you moving out enough
maybe.
money to?
He only makes like 800,000 or
Mm-hmm.
900,000. So
I think you still have to shave a little more. I mean, that's a Jordan Greenway conversation then, right? For LTIR, and we don't know what. Sounds like he's getting close to maybe being serviceable
maybe, maybe
here in
not.
the
Hard to
stretch,
say. Tyler
or
Tucker
maybe
makes
they just shelve him.
975
Nine. Okay.
and Kessel makes 800. Matthew Kessel's the other defenseman that they have, who would just sort of
Does
be
that move the
a
needle enough?
serviceable.
Does that
Yeah,
does
is
that
that
move the needle
fixing
enough?
your
I mean,
problem enough?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe not. But
I would say
do you
find
have
different
enough?
options.
Like, do you have enough with a mid-round pick to, does Luke Shen do it for you? Because he's probably not going to cost you a whole lot. You could probably get them to retain on that. I think he's 2.25. The Connor Murphy one that stung a little bit. I feel like that's a reasonable deal, but if the Sabres are trying to keep every dollar available for a bigger swing, it makes sense why they would pass on a Connor Murphy trade. So, yeah, as far as what's out there, it feels like there will be options and it feels like they could get one for a mid-round pick. They don't need like a Rasmus Ristolainen if it's going to cost, A, the money that Ristolainen makes this year and next, and B, like if the Flyers are looking for a first-round pick or a legit top-end prospect, like I don't think you need that level of player once Timmins is back, and the hope would be you can get Kesselring going a little bit. You can get by with more of a depth addition, but I don't know. We'll see. Like, does Logan Stanley move at some point? What does that cost? Uh, I think there's enough options out there, and you have the lever to pull with Jordan Greenway that you can still address defense. And all along, I think my thought on the defense is it's a smaller ad. The
Mhm.
anybody who makes a big number, you're looking at the top 4 defensemen that you're already paying a good chunk of your salary cap, and then you're looking at Michael Kesselring. Not that he needs not that he's going to get a big payday this summer, but that he is part of theoretically what you're building, right? He's part of your future, and
He 100% is, I think. Yeah.
so
And I'm not overly worried about Kesselring either. I think
I'm
actually going out and getting another defenseman might actually get his competitive juices flowing, simplify his game.
yeah, I still believe in the talent really strongly, and think he's just had a lot of bad luck and has gotten into his own head. So I wouldn't be giving up on Kesselring by any means, but that's 5 defensemen that could be part of your future already. So adding another big cap hit doesn't make sense anyway. So go
Mhm.
find a depth guy, just a serviceable guy that can give you another option, give you a different lineup option depending on the opponent. Maybe you're playing a big, heavy team and Metza doesn't, you know, you can't trust Metza for too many minutes. Like, go get somebody else.
Maybe you finally give Ryan Johnson a look that he deserves. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm running out of belief that that will happen because it's
Yeah.
been
Ryan Johnson has a one-way, he's got the full NHL salary regardless of where he plays next year
yeah, they
on his
gotta
contract. Something to think about there too.
I they have some organizational options for next year, which is another reason why adding, it doesn't have to be some big addition. Murphy would have been nice, but it doesn't even have to be that big
Yeah.
to make the right impact on this team because I think no matter what, they're just going to put a heavy workload on those top 4 guys as they've done. So you just need to have some insurance, a little bit of depth, and Timmins is getting a little closer. So they don't
And the
have
Sabres keep winning, and they
the
keep winning.
Sabres keep winning, and the level of you know addition that Thomas would be is much different than that alters the course of your next few years, really, not just this year. So it's a swing worth taking, and I don't think it would impact too much what you can do on the blue line.
It feels like it's beyond 50-50,
Yeah, it
but
feels like it's
it's
hovering in that range. Like any trade this time of year, it's hard to know. Like Darren Dreger, like we don't need to parse like the insider, but like multiple people have you know put this out there, and I think when you're thinking about how information gets around and things like that, like Yarmo's pretty close to the vest on a lot of stuff. But because so many of these players have no trade clauses, like a lot of times agencies have to be in the loop on these deals, even
well,
more so than they
that's
would otherwise. And so the full no trade clause, like the agency is going to have to be in the loop here. And so that certainly lends some validity to how some of this could get around.
I think it's the agency. I don't think it's Armstrong trying to put this out there to induce a greater offer out of Utah. Now, you could look at it the other way. The agency could say, my player wants to go to Utah, and I'm gonna put this out there to try to facilitate that happening.
Who knows?
I don't know,
Who
but I
knows?
do I think this is more agency, and I also suspect that, um, just based on historical from some of the insiders that this is agency driven, but I'm not gonna dive into that a little bit. That's my theory anyways, but
But
who
when we
knows?
bring up the percentage chances of it happening, like it got real legs yesterday because of who's putting it out there. Right.
Yep,
And so
exactly.
I think, yeah, somewhere in the 50-50 range. And hey, Sabres being a main character at the deadline, it's it's different.
Yeah, I didn't
It's
see this
different.
one coming 4 or 5. Well, I mean, I thought it would be the other way. I thought it would have been like an Alex Tuck type of
Right,
scenario.
like, a
You
few
know what I
months ago,
mean?
you mean,
Like a few
yeah,
months ago, you thought,
yeah,
yeah, like that. Okay,
and
wow,
now
yeah,
it's
it's a
like
little, still
t
difficult to grasp. I always say that kind of jokingly. It's like I struggle talking about a successful team. Well,
well,
the reality is that they haven't won shit yet.
it's the nature of the success, right? It's the nature of the turnaround, like, the
Yeah.
complete 180 that from where they were, like, they have the most points in the league since December 9th. It's kind of insane, and
Coming into last night, Matt, first in the NHL with a 806 points percentage, third in the NHL, 3.77 goals per game, first in the NHL, 2.52 goals against per game. They had the ninth best PK at 80%. First in the NHL, again, coming into last night's game, first in the NHL with a 918 save percentage
since December 9th, you're
since
talking?
December
Yeah,
9th.
they I wrote it last night, but, like, it had to have been pretty disorienting for Jack Eichel, right? Like,
Yeah.
to be like the crowd, the way the team is playing, the reception that Tage Thompson got, right? And, like, being like, "Man, it had to have been a little mind-blowing for
Yeah.
Eichel," and, how far this team has come in such a short period of time. It's gonna make this week really interesting, and we'll be here to fill people in and give our thoughts on how it all unfolds here in the next few days.
Yeah, just over 48 hours away. The NHL trade deadline was at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
3 p.m. Eastern on
Yarmo will
Friday,
talk at 4, I think.
March 6th. Well, this was a day that Kevin Adams would say congratulations to GMs that he was making deals with. We'll see if Yarmo says congratulations. He doesn't seem like a congratulations guy, especially if
Not
it's
a big
Doug Armstrong, who he may still have some
Yeah.
bitterness, at least against, maybe not him as the human, but who he is in the job that he's in right now.
Yeah, he leapfrogged Yarmo for that job way back when Yarmo was working in St. Louis. So maybe that'll have him dig his heels in on what he's given up, right? He'll be like,
Strange bedfellows.
really
right?
wants to win this one.
All right. Well, Matthew, let's get some plugs. We're over an hour. Let's get some plugs and let's get out of here.
Yeah, people can head to theathletic.com/Sabres. Jeremy Rutherford and I did a breakdown of the Robert Thomas Sabres situation, why it makes sense, what it could cost, what the Blues are looking for, all that good stuff, and have some coverage from last night's game as well. And as I said on Monday, I'll be with the team in Pittsburgh for their game against the Penguins, and then trade deadline is Friday, so it's a good time to jump on board. And NFL free agency coming up, so head to theathletic.com/Sabres or theathletic.com/Buffalo, theathletic.com/NHL. We've got the league wide insiders all over everything. So those are the plugs, and like and subscribe to the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show.
I need to go to theathletic.com/bathroom. Somebody get us out of here. For Matthew Fairburn, you heard his plugs. Go find him, subscribe, do all that stuff. For the production crew, who I had something, but my bladder is overtaking my ability to think. I'm Chris Baker. We will see you after the trade deadline here at the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. Stay glued to Matthew's social media feeds for all the latest leading up to the trade deadline. And until next time, have a great rest of your week.